Good afternoon. Welcome to the second CIES webinar. This afternoon we have three members on the panel. We will start with Charles Frémont, former student of the FIFA Master 15th edition, who has been working now in Paris in a company called Le Tremplin. So you will explain us in a few minutes what it is. Hi, Charles. Second one is Pedro Presa, who is alumni from the 12th edition of the FIFA Master. Hi, Pedro.
Hi, Pierre, and hi, everyone.
And
hi,
Pedro is co-founder and co-director of MyCujoo, and you will tell us in a few minutes as well what the company is and what you're doing. Third member of the panel today is Sebastian Rubio. Sebastian Rubio is an alumni of the 2010 edition of the CIES Universidad Católica Argentina course in Buenos Aires, and is our coordinator, CIES coordinator in Peru, and is the founder of various companies, and you will tell us in a few minutes as well.
Hi, Pierre, and everyone. Nice to see you.
Hi, Sebastian. So our first question to all three of you, and I will start with Sebastian, is to know a bit, today our main aim is about, how to deal with entrepreneurs and startups companies. So tell us a bit what your startups are and what your involvement in the sports industry. Sebastian.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi to the audience. I'm a Peruvian. I'm in Peru right now, 6:32 a.m. Thanks for the time. Mine is a small, medium sports marketing / sports business group that we launched here in Peru back in 2011. I was working previously in Europe, in the US, in Latam, within the sports industry in Nike. And I decided to launch my entrepreneurship back in 2011 in Peru. So just to set the ground, I mean, Peru is still a very underdeveloped market, a very niche market in terms of sport. So it's both a challenge and an opportunity. And we've been reinventing ourselves every year. But actually, we have 4 business units. One business unit is regarding education. So we promote several educational programs in the country. One of them is the FIFA CIES, of course, but also within marketing and science. A second business unit is sports marketing consultancy, which has been hit strongly in these times, of course. So we consult brands that want to connect with sports and build brand equity through sports. And at the same time, we advise sports property and how to commercialize their assets. So that's the sports marketing side, which has been difficult times right now. The third one is like the most common one, where you start a business, which is basically events and academies. So we run a lot of corporate events. We manage a couple of sports centers, but especially the last years, we've been very successful in our football academy. We managed the Boca Juniors brand here in Peru for the last 8 years, and we have almost 500 kids training with us, which that's another business that has suffered a lot recently. And finally, we are within the retail area. Although, of course, coming from the Nike background, we launched a sports specialty football e-commerce site. Not so much focus on professional football, on amateur football and team sports, basically. So that it's a business we've been managing here in Peru, in Chile, and Argentina, and we have to reshape it now, especially in this time. So in a nutshell, is that we try to professionalize the industry, connect back to sports, and reinvent each other each year in this niche market, like the Peruvian one.
Thanks, Sebastian. I think you described very well your industry and your country. Well, let's move to Pedro and tell us a bit what MyCujoo, a small idea for a Boavista fan, became quite a big fish in the industry.
Thank you so much, Pierre, and hi, everyone. A small correction, I heard from some friends from my class that Pierre said the wrong edition of the Master, so I'm from the 9th edition. I think you said the 12th, something like this, so just a small correction. But thanks for the opportunity. So I started MyCujoo back in 2014 after working some years in the professional football sides of the industry with the EPFL and a small adventure into beach soccer. I started the company with my brother, my twin brother as well, back in 2014. And we developed MyCujoo as a technology provider for the football world, building up solutions that could enable content rights holders to stream content live to their communities of fans, and on top of that, obviously, build up a business model that is sustainable. The reason why we came up to the idea was personal. My team back then was in the 3rd division. I was living in Switzerland, could not follow the content. They were suffering a lot about TV money and sponsorship money. So we came up with the idea. Currently, for now 5 years into the game, we went live with the platform back in 2015 with 56 live streams. This year alone, so this past year, we broadcasted approximately 30,000 live matches in the platform to millions of fans across the world, working with more than 100 FIFA member associations. We decided to test other sports as well. But I think given the current situation that we're facing now, technology will start playing more and more an important role to connect people and to help these small and medium-sized organizations across the globe to make money and connect with their communities. So I really see this as an opportunity going forward.
Thank you. Well, I will move to our first speaker, Charles Frémont, 15th edition. There, I'm pretty sure about that.
It is.
Charles, can you tell me a little bit what you're doing? I mean, it's a little bit a different aspect, but from the same game. Tell us.
Exactly, Pierre. So I don't have as much merit as Pedro or Sebastian would, because I'm maybe the only one that's not an entrepreneur on this panel. But so basically, Le Tremplin, we are the first sports specific incubator in Europe. So we were founded back in 2014 at the initiative of the city of Paris. And since then, we've grown into becoming the biggest sport tech hub in Europe. So what we do, we're a not-for-profit organization, and we work both with sports organizations, so clubs, federations, sponsors, brands, and we also work with startups. And our goal is to mentor the startups so that they can become credible companies to partner with the sport organization. So our mission is really to bridge that gap between those two groups to make sport more innovative. But Le Tremplin is not a legal entity by itself. We are one incubator, part of a larger group that is called Paris&Co that opened 14 different incubators in 14 different sectors in Paris. So all of Paris&Co together, we're the largest incubator in Europe because we mentor and accompany more than 400 companies every year. And we are not for profit, so we're not linked to any investment fund. We're not linked to any specific one corporate organizations, but we really work to foster innovation in our 14 different sectors. So we have a view that's really sport specific, but we can also get some great examples from other industries, which is quite helpful when we're talking about innovation. We don't hear you, Pierre.
Just to continue on that, Charles, can you tell us how much your job has changed since the crisis started?
Well, it's a good question. Obviously, my job has remained kind of the same if I compare it to the jobs of the startups that we work with. So we our goal at Le Tremplin is really to help entrepreneurs develop products that will be the most fit to the market needs as possible. So that's the topic on which we mentor the most companies. Obviously, since the beginning of the crisis, the priority has not been on product development for startups, but mostly on topics that are more general to entrepreneurship in general, whether it be cash management, whether it be dealing with HR situations, because a lot of employees have to be put on unemployment leave. So we really shifted, I would say, the way we mentor startups to be sure that we are the most appropriate and the most relevant to their needs. So my job has not changed that much. We work obviously remotely now. In Paris, the lockdown has been up until since March 17th. It's just been announced on Monday evening that it will be extended 1 month until May 11th. We still don't know what's going to happen on May 11th. We know that it's going to be a bit less strict, but we still don't know what's going to happen. And so what we do is we really do our sessions online. We do our mentoring sessions online. We organize a lot of workshops between the CEOs of the different companies that we accompany, so they can exchange together. Obviously, we have 3,000 square meters office space located in the Jean Bouin Stadium in Paris, where entrepreneurs meet every day on a regular basis. They exchange in the corridor, at the coffee machine, etc. So obviously they don't have that relationship anymore, that close link. So we try to organize as many sessions as possible via webinars, so they can have these forums to change. So we really adapted our model quite quickly to the situation. But of course, the companies are in a bit more difficult situation, because obviously their clients are obviously not responding usually. So depending on which markets they're in.
A small problem to touch the microphone. Well, it's interesting to see how these companies are. I will come back to you because there are many questions. But Pedro, how has it changed? All the crisis, your daily life and your daily work.
So to be honest, we're kind of already used in the company to work remotely. We have policies in place since many years where I would say 80% of the employees are allowed to work from home on a bi-weekly basis. So to work with the team was actually something we adapted quite easily, because we were already doing it a lot. What changed in my personal experience in terms of facing work is that I was traveling a lot. So I was literally traveling 3 to 4 days a week. Unfortunately for my family, so they're kind of happy that I'm home for the last 31 days. But that changed a lot, because I'm used to be directly relating with partners on a personal basis, face to face, and as well representing the company in multiple ways around the world. And that changed quite significantly. Nevertheless, relationship with shareholders or relationship with boards or employees, we were already quite used to it. In terms of working within the company, obviously this impacted. The status quo is clear. There's no content currently available. Actually, there's 4 leagues available. MyCujoo is currently broadcasting 2 of those leagues, Belarus and Tajikistan. But that made us adapt internally to make sure that everybody was active and contributing to the company's objectives. And that obviously had an impact in some of the people's operations. But so far, and companies like the one that Charles worked with, non-for-profit and governments, have been amazing. So we're really happy to say that we have established ourselves in countries that have been really supportive of the current situation we're facing. Basically, our main working capital stays in the Netherlands, and we've been receiving a lot of financial support there. Switzerland as well has already opened some initiatives, but all of the countries we operate, Singapore, Portugal, Holland and Switzerland, have deferred tax payments over salaries, which enabled us to keep the people without having to lay off anybody or even restructure in terms of salaries. But we had to adapt a little bit to the crisis, but we see this as an opportunity because we're analyzing cash status. We're looking into where we were spending money without having to. We're refocusing strategies, creating new business models that in the past we weren't creating because we didn't have time to focus, right? We were too dependent on certain things and opening new opportunities. But so far, so good, I would have to say.
Thank you very much for all these details, Pedro. It's very interesting. Before I completely understand the traveling issue, and my wife is very happy as well. You know that I'm the only one trying to challenge you. Before moving to Sebastian, Tim Guttels from the 5th edition of the FIFA Master had a question to Charles and what he said earlier. Are you facing a situation in which some of the startups you're working with are clearly giving signs of stopping their activities or going to another sector?
Yeah, well, first of all, hi Tim. I hope everything is well for you in Lausanne, for you and your company as well. Yes, well, the answer is not clear yet. It's right now in France, the French government has announced many different initiatives to help entrepreneurs, and so it's not maybe as a direct aid like the Swiss government has put in place for entrepreneurs, but it's more they guarantee the loans that you can get at your bank, so you get you can get cash quite quickly, and you can also have very interesting interest rates because it's guaranteed by the government. So that's the main initiative that has been put in place. Yet there are many that are coming. So on the short term, startups are not necessarily lacking cash because some of them already had quite some good amounts of cash in their treasury. The ones who didn't are eligible to get those aids. So on the short term, that's not really the risk. It's mostly on the longer term when the crisis starts being behind us, that companies will suffer the most because some of their clients, whether they're football clubs, they're sport events, they are sponsors, will obviously have had a lack of money coming in. And that means that they will have to cut on certain initiatives. And usually, unfortunately, and maybe this is something we can discuss a bit later on, but unfortunately, innovation is one of the first cuts that is happening in big organizations. And I think that's quite unfortunate because innovation should be a solution to many of the problems that sport organizations face at the moment. So I guess the main kind of date where we will see the real impact of the crisis, at least to most of our companies, will be at the end of the year or at the beginning of 2021, when all of these yearly contracts get renewed. That's when we will see if their clients, the startups' clients, still have the budget to pay them. And also, for all the sport events that have been postponed a year, we're talking, of course, about the Olympics, Euro, everything. We still don't know if the situation will still be stable in 2021 and if these events will happen. So all our startups who are suppliers to those events are kind of very at risk at the moment because everything will depend on how the situation evolves. And so that's why it's difficult to give a clear answer to your question, Tim. I hope I could be as clear as I could, but I think it's a bit too soon to really address what's going to happen. But what I can tell you is out of the close to 50 companies that we have currently under contract at Le Tremplin, none have shut down their business yet. So that's quite encouraging.
Okay, Sebastian, I move towards your situation and how you started already to tell us that it did have an impact for two of your own companies. Tell us a little bit more about the current situation.
Yeah, of course. Just to give you a context, we are in lockdown situation till from March 15. And at the beginning, the first 2 weeks for us, it was like, I don't know, business as usual. You're trying to work remotely, trying to keep the day-to-day basis. But then suddenly we realized this is for a long run, especially in underdeveloped markets or emerging markets. Here, I think they are applying very strict measures because we don't have a strong health system or a strong economic background, So they're very strict here in Peru, and going back to the old times or business as usual, I think it's going to be second semester, although you cannot predict nothing. And the mood has changed, from the day-to-day remote to start thinking strategically for next year, basically. On the day-to-day basis, my job is like a twofold, it's 50% human resources and 50% market, Again, unfortunately, although 10, 12 people work for my company and in the payroll, and we're trying to use the government subsidies to help them and help the company, there's a lot, like 15 more, like football teachers, for instance, that are independent. And that's a reality of our country, Peru and most Latin American countries. Here it's to an extreme, but 70% of the economy is informal and 30% is formal. So I'm dealing with my 50% payroll, with all of the taxes and giving them advice, and at the same time dealing with the other independents on a HR basis, soft skills, helping them, helping personally to them. I'm also creating some corporate social responsibility campaigns within my companies to help them. So that's taken me a lot of the time, which is understandable, and I'm really glad to be doing. The other 50% of the time, my team and the front end managers are, of course, talking with clients, checking out or trying to predict a forecast, sensing out the market, planning. I think Pedro mentioned it before. This is like a forced stop in order to plan 2021 onwards. I was talking with Charles last week and trying to learn about his business model. So I'm trying to incubate new projects. So I would say it's 50% day-to-day trying to help my people, and 50% trying to incubate new projects, talk with people, learn benchmarks, and trying to be strong when this situation recovers or gets to kind of normal,
Well, I think it's really clear out of what you three said that the situation currently is about imagining potential scenarios. We will not be able today to see a lot of the next scenarios, but what our listener Ramzi Gigi on YouTube said, how would you evaluate the sports tech market, particularly today in the Mediterranean area and in the Middle East? Do you think that's one, because that's one of the area where it's less impacted? Tuva from last year says hello to me. Thank you. It's probably less impacted from what we hear. Do you see it as one of the opportunities currently as a new market for the incubators and for the new technological companies?
The question is directed to me, Pierre, or? Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know if...
All three of you.
Okay, all three of us. From what I can tell, well, of course, we mostly concentrate on the French market at Le Tremplin, so I'm not exactly familiar with you know the whole market share of sports tech around the world. What I can tell though is sports tech is very broad. It doesn't only refer to professional sport with clubs, leagues, federations, etc. It doesn't only refer to you know, fan engagement solution. It also refers to you know, the day-to-day sports practice of people, and that is very, very different from one country to another. I was in Qatar last year in the Middle East. They are quite dynamic in sports tech. They launched their own accelerator called Qatar Sports Tech, and we exchanged quite a lot with them. So some of their startups who wanted to reach out in the French market joined our program afterwards, and vice versa. And when I went there, I was exchanging with you know, the director of development of the Qatari Tennis Federation, and he's Greek, so he knows very well. He's the one who trained actually Stefano Tsitsipas and all the new Greek stars on the ATP tour. And he was telling me that, you know, he just took this job 2 years ago in Qatar to develop to develop tennis for the local population. And what he was mentioning is that, you know, although Qatar is such a big country in the sports landscape right now, with of course the World Cup coming in 2022, they had the World Athletics Championships last year. They had the World Handball Championship as well, and they're really a country that is rising on the map. But if you look at the population, I mean, it's I don't know how many millions there are, but it's quite narrow. It's not a big market. And then when you look at tennis, he says, if I want to go develop tennis for the Qatari people, it's about, you know, like he says, there's about 30% of the population in Qatar that's actually local people. 70% is expats. So if I take, let's say they have 1 million inhabitants, I take 300,000, which is the amount of local people. And then out of those local people, the weather is so hot outside, and there's no really, like, the culture to practice tennis outside is not very developed because of the temperature. It's about maybe 10% of 300,000 that is like the market for potential tennis players from Qatar. So that's we're down to 30,000 people. And that's, if you want to launch a startup in tennis in Qatar, it's a very, very, very niche market. So that's why I was just giving that as an example to say it's very difficult to identify what is the sports tech market in its globality. I mean, in France, we're working more and more to develop that and see how many millions or even billions of euros it generates every year. But it's a very difficult exercise to do. So at least on my end, it's very difficult to address a question. Maybe Pedro, you have a more focused market, so maybe you have more information on that.
Yeah, I was just adding to what you say, which was it's really great intel. It's not a very big market, and obviously it depends if you speak about Qatar or Dubai or Abu Dhabi. What I can tell is that there's definitely a lot of interest in terms of financial private investors to invest in sports. One of the biggest funds in the world that we all know is Mubadala, that is from the Abu Dhabi government. They're bringing sports events every year to the region of world class. We work with some of these events, beach soccer, for instance, which is one of our partners for the next, so it's now 3 years. We're currently broadcasting big events there, but on top, you see that they're investing a lot of money into the City Football Group and expanding the franchise all over the globe. So as Charles said, I'm not an expert as well in the region. I only know from what I've been working on. There's definitely a lot of space into football and other sports in terms of building tech that can add value. We're working on the live streaming space, because as Charles said, there's so many other aspects that need to be covered in terms of sports techs. But there's definitely cash available in the region and obviously opportunities.
Okay, I will move to the next question. There are two, one from Ali Abu Nasser for Pedro and one for everybody. The one from Ali Abu Nasser is regarding the fact that people are moving more and more. So you can see the question on the screen. So more moving to social media and hearing towards content creation. What do you think? Is it now this use of the spare time for football? And
yeah. It's a very good question and a very difficult one to answer. I will tell you my point of view, and I might not be right. I think sports is life, right? That's how I see it. At MyCujoo, we had to build up a business continuity plan that involved everybody in the company, including our shareholders. And this ranges from organizing ourselves into working together from home, and as well developing relationships with partners on a daily basis and growing the business, right? So our business is 100% focused in live, and there's a complete lockdown around the world. There's no live content whatsoever, so we needed to readapt, and we have a massive archive of content, and we are on a daily basis restreaming content, so we call it relive, working with the federations and the clubs and the teams working with us to make sure that we drive users to the platform. But from the data that we have currently and in the past, on-demand content and original content, yes, it has value, but not the same value as live content currently. So what I really see is that definitely there's a lot of space to work with streamers, players, clubs, fans around the world to create this type of original pieces. And there's more and more interest from brands around these authentic formats of content. But the whole industry is locked down. And Sebastian was saying that sponsors are not investing anymore. So I was just speaking yesterday with someone that I work with on a regular basis that informed me that YouTube had a drop of 30% in their advertising revenue. Facebook, I know as well from speaking directly with people there, that they had more than 40% drop in advertising. So what we feel is that, yeah, there's space to create original content, but when you are running a business and when you're building up a sustainable company to your shareholders and to make sure that you as well sustain it for the employees in these times of crisis, you need to focus on what drives revenue to the company. And in my point of view, this is not the case for the time being. So it's more, you can leverage it as a way to build up the brand value and build up your market value in terms of positioning and getting coverage and reaching out to communities, but you still have the bills to pay. So yes, there's an opportunity to focus there, but we as a company have not put full focus into building up this type of formats of content, because we really need to rethink ways of driving revenues to the company. And I really still believe, underline that when it comes to sports, live is still king.
Okay. Well, you know, it's complex, Pedro. I think before going to the next question, I have my own one. It's complex about the position of sport, because sport is between the most important about life, but as well, in certain moments, sport has shown how unimportant and undecisive it may be at some minutes. You know, and this has been the case, as it was, I use that always in class, the case for 11th of September 2001, where there was in Rome the famous match to be played between AS Rome and Real Madrid, and people at the end of the day didn't care about it. It showed that at certain moments, the role of sport is a bit complex and need to be redefined. And Julian Smith had a question. Julian was a student of the FIFA Master last year. To what degree is the crisis informing how the sport industry should look at technology, innovation, and startups? I will start with Sebastian on that.
So, can you put the question again? To what extent? Okay. Well, this is a personal view, and just going on top of Charles' description before, when he was asked about the question of entrepreneurship and tech sports and stuff. Of course, tech solutions are going to be more than welcomed in sports right now. Digital platforms, of course, are very well received right now, and that's a given. Nevertheless, not always tech equals innovation, and especially it depends on the life cycle of your market, but reality right now is making us rethink how to change our processes. Of course, using technology to some degree, but maybe more basic processes, Now here our local leagues, our local clubs need to re-equip their stadiums and their venues with all the health and sanitary equipment they didn't have, okay? Sports centers like ours need to do the same. We need to work in our future classes within our soccer academies in a more personalized way. So again, I just wanted to make the statement that of course tech is very important, and most of the time is the way we innovate, but there's other ways of innovating, And I don't know if I understand correctly the question, but what we're trying to make here, promote here, within the region at least, and we've been trying to do like many of you guys, is webinars and educational programs to keep the people learning, is to make aware of that to our community, So that's something we've been trying to do. I think also there's an opportunity over there. In terms of Peru, for instance, it's like a mixture of a lot of situations, We are coming from qualification to a World Cup after 40 years. We just hosted the Pan American Games. So there was a hype in sports, and now comes the COVID crisis. So how do you bundle or mix all that? I see there's an opportunity because there's awareness of sports right now. There's a lot of people wanting to go into the marketplace. So we need to reinvent ourselves. I don't know if through creating new ventures or freelancing jobs, but us as promoters of the professional of the industry want to create and mingle and articulate all that community to get matches between both the offer and the market, I don't know if I asked the question straightly, but I just wanted to give you
Sebastian,
my feedback.
you did completely. I was reading last week in 24 Heures, the daily paper from Lausanne, exactly the same thing that you just said about the Pan American. They had recently the Winter Youth Olympics, and it was a very positive element coming out of it. And they said in less than a month, this positivity seems gone. So how to reactivate it? This is the key question probably that we will have to deal with. And Charles, you have to deal with this reactivation. So tell us a bit more about reactivation.
Yeah, well, definitely, because I mostly spoke about startups from the beginning of this webinar, but we also work with corporate sports organizations, and they're not only clubs or federations, but we work with fitness centers, for example, and we work with brands such as Decathlon and Nike. And so they're all thinking about how it's going to be when we leave this crisis and their shops and fitness centers reopen. And so definitely we're kind of organizing right now some workshops between our partners, not only our startups, but between our partners, because they're all, for example, the three examples that I gave, they're all related to welcoming public in public places. And of course, in France, even if the restrictions go down on May 11, the government has already mentioned that it would be highly improbable that before mid-July, the public spaces reopen. And so we're actually reflecting on how can these organizations use technologies to, for example, just regulate the amount of people that are coming in their fitness centers or their shops? How can they track the temperature of the people that are in to make sure that they don't that they have enough security to not spread the virus more? How do they, in the fitness center, need to place the equipment so that people keep the social distancing between themselves? And so these are all reflections that, of course, technology will be a key answer to. And that's why we're working quite a lot at the moment, maybe even more than usual, trying to find solutions for those. For the rest, as you mentioned, Pierre, at the beginning, the idea is not to make scenarios because it's all hypothetic for now. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there will be a second wave. We don't know many things. And so that's why it's so difficult. And that's why I think it's such a good opportunity for sports organizations to partner with startups, because startups are small companies and they are much more agile in the way that they work. And this crisis has proven it, because we had some companies, for example, who were organizing sports activities within companies so that the employers are more active and they're more, they have a better well-being at work. And now they completely shifted their model in just a few days, and now providing classes online and they're quite successful with it as well. So that's the advantage of working with a startup, is that you can switch your strategy all of a sudden without having too many costs incurred, and by having really creative people working for you and developing personalized products. So I think definitely startups relations will be highly important for sport organizations. And I challenge all of the people who are listening to us, actually, that work in clubs, work in federations, to be more open during this time where they have more time and actually look at what technologies are available. I'll give you my contact information. I can definitely help you guys with this after.
I definitely agree. If I can add a bit just to what Charles said, people, so the fixed costs in the startup are really low compared to big corporations, which enable them to be much more flexible, more lean, more entrepreneurial and adapt easy to what the market is offering. So this really can be an opportunity for companies like MyCujoo, the companies of Sebastian and the companies that Charles are working with, but many more out there. So there's really a time, if there was a time for small companies and startups to have their say in the industries now. And when it comes to the COVID-19 crisis, I definitely believe that technology can play a massive role. I just read an article today that it's estimated that until 2022, people will have to live a new norm where social distancing will be a certain thing. So people will not be able to go to stadiums, clubs, leagues, federations, confederations. They will need to rely on technology to collect data, to collect video live, to engage with communities. So more than ever, there's a chance for technology companies to strive in this very conservative world until now. And I think big organizations will be open to it.
Just to add on that, Pierre, and if you allow me, of course, I agree totally with Charles. I mean, startups are more light, more adaptable, more flexible, and can work with sports properties. And so, but I think there's an opportunity also to step behind the startups. At least in our market, there are going to be a lot of layoffs within the sports industry, of course, but there's another market of a lot of freelancers. We have only in FIFA CIES program, we have 8 editions times 40, I mean, more than 300 freelancers who are doing other things, but they're available and looking forward to freelance in specific projects regarding sports. You know, they can be hired, and if things move forward, they can start a startup or go into that organization. But I think there's also a market for us, the community, the industry, and freelancing is an option also.
Yes, my last question to the whole group, and then I think we could leave, is are you at the moment curious to work with other sectors, not only the sports sector? Is there, I think that this is a great moment to learn in discussion with other sectors. Tell us a little bit who you speak with most. Pedro, to start with.
Thank you, Pierre. Definitely. I think as a company, we have a responsibility towards our employees and towards our shareholders. in finding innovative ways to make sure that the company strives in the future. So far, we were 100% dependent on live football matches being put into the platform, and that's completely stopped. The good thing is that we have an amazing team and very talented people in the company. And for the last 5 years, we have invested all our resources into developing a state-of-the-art technology. We have built up a system of microservices into the clouds that we can serve in modules to different companies. And our technology is not only adaptable to sports, so we can use MyCujoo to live stream music, to live stream religious events, whatever you can imagine of. So in the last 2 weeks, we've built up a completely new business model. We've built up MyCujoo live streaming services. We have now a financial plan. We have a sales team within the company. We're using same employees, and we're working really hard. We already have closed with the clients in Brazil, actually, where we're basically selling technology. And we definitely see this as a huge opportunity to the company. We have companies in the past that have done it as well. A really good example that we base ourselves into is Bumtech, that started as live streaming services for the MLB. And in a matter of 5 to 6 years, they were selling services to HBO, Disney, etc. So I really feel that this is a time to open up and start leveraging your resources to as well speak with other industries and maybe learn from what other industries are doing to as well bring it back to sport.
Microphone is finally working. I'm touching twice anytime. Well, I think it has been great to speak to all of you. I'm sure we will speak soon again, and it's important to see that in this framework, sport is an interesting sector because it's probably not the most essential in the start of the crisis, but is essential to build community in a moment where the concept of community is so complicated. And startups have this easy way, and companies have these easy ways to promote innovation and community. And I think that's dealing with that there is a lot to learn. I've been talking to people working in the arts and festivals logic, which is very close to the sports one, and they have a lot of problems. Well, as Norris Ferguson say, continue innovation, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed the discussion. I thank you all three for your participation, and I hope we see each other very soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Gracias.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.